Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Is It a Real Classic, a podcast about movies and TV shows where a bunch of well-versed folks come together and answer that age-old question, movie debate about what makes a classic. I am, of course, your host, Lit Nick, coming to you live from the studio today. Once again, it's wonderful to be back.
The forge of content, as we like to call it.
Forge of content.
It's toasty.
And as you can hear next to me, we, of course, have Mr. John Wick Jared. Say hello once again.
That's me.
Okay, well, we have to develop something other than saying, hello, it's
me. What does he say in John Wick?
My dog is dead?
My dog is dead. I'm going to kill you. That's what he says a lot in that movie, I think.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
I'm retired.
I'm retired, and now I'm not. And I'm also very handsome because I'm Keanu Reeves.
The newly on Netflix Cobra Kai KP. Say hello, Cobra Kai KP.
I highly recommend watching Cobra Kai on Netflix. It is amazing.
We're gonna put that in the notes for a possible another time.
And if I were to imitate the leader of Cobra Kai, I would have to say something not PC, because everything that comes out of his mouth is not PC. So therefore, I will remain quiet. Yeah, sweep the leg's good.
Sweep the leg. And unfortunately, we do not have Justin with us today, but we do have the always wonderful Ray Tutui. Say hello, Ray.
No, just call me Ray.
Listen, we are going to come with a movie nickname.
Ray Tutui.
Ray Tutui.
Ray
Tutui is good.
Yes, absolutely.
Ratatouille is a good movie.
It's a really good movie. I would be honored.
But the name Ray Tutui is not a good name.
You raise a valid point.
You raise.
Hey!
All right.
I'm going to leave now.
Okay. Did you leave? Okay.
This episode's already over.
No. Today's episode is on Wes Craven's New Nightmare. For those of you who don't know, Wes Craven's New Nightmare is the 7th film, I believe, in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise.
They said in the movie, the first movie, then 5 sequels. So
7th, yes. And it doesn't actually take place in the film's canon, but in the real world, where the Nightmare films are just that. Films. The plot follows Heather Langenkamp years after she played the original role of Nancy on Nightmare on Elm Street, after she's asked to reprise the role for one final Nightmare movie. The only problem is that she, her son, and the rest of the cast and crew are somehow being tormented by the slasher icon, who seeks to leave the silver screen and enter the real world. Dun, dun, dun.
Wes Craven's in it.
Wes Craven is in it. This movie is extremely meta.
Yeah,
it is.
It paints Freddy as this kind of ancient evil who takes on different forms, and then Wes Craven was talking in the movie as Wes Craven, writing the script for the movie that he was in. Again, very meta. But he was talking about how if a writer can capture its essence in a very particular way, that it kind of inhabits that form. Mm-hmm. And since they stopped making movies, or the movies got diluted, as he was talking, which I thought was really funny, because he was like, man,
y'all
these sequels, they're just terrible. Completely missing the point. But that Freddy is now escaping into our world.
And in a way, you would say that fairy tales or tragedy, Greek tragedy, whatever, that the evil is inspired by true events.
Yeah.
And then a cautionary tale encapsulates that. When the cautionary tale dies, the evil is released again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of like the movie plays this like picture where it's like kind of alluding to constantly Brothers Grimm's tales, specifically Hansel and Gretel with like the breadcrumbs and the witch getting thrown into the like oven, and this really dark thing. You think, oh, fairy tales are nice and happy because how they've been Disneyfied. The originals are terrifying.
Correct.
Cinderella, they had the heels nipped off by a bunch of birds.
They, like, the other girls were like chopping off pieces of their foot to like fit in the slipper. But then the prince was like, oh my god, hey, are you good? Are you good? There's like blood everywhere. Yeah. I don't think you're I mean, yeah, it fits now, but like
right.
I don't.
We're good. You take 5 steps back.
Don't take any steps. You're missing a chunk.
Oh yeah. So there's a bunch of meta references, and the fact of where horror is at the time of its release, which was 1995, which is a couple years before Scream completely changes the game in terms of where slashers were and where they went, but also kind of speaks on horror in general, I would argue, because everyone and their mother has had the argument about, horror being this like oh, but why did you let your kids watch that? Why those aren't good and blah, blah, blah. It's like this whole argument about moral policing almost of the horror genre, even though the horror genre has existed for centuries and has existed for a reason, which is kind of what we alluded to here.
I'm fairly certain the first time anybody told a happy story, they followed it up with a scary story, right? I mean, from the time they started telling people stories to try to influence their trains of thought, you know?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the old fairy tales were, like, cautionary in a lot of ways, where it's just like, hey, don't go wandering into the woods. A witch will eat you. Don't
talk to strangers. Danger.
Stranger danger. It's a little more effective other than, like, hey, don't go into the woods. You might get lost, or, like, a bear will attack you, or then, like, a witch will eat you and your soul will burn in hell for eternity.
Right.
It's, like, a tiny bit stronger.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Not that that's exactly the role that horror movies play in our society, but
well, I mean,
that's
like,
still what I would consider, quote, horror.
Horror itself has always been about the metaphor. Like, if you look at any, like, horror movie that's really caught wind, they've always kind of been an exaggeration of a certain aspect.
Don't go to camp.
They capture...
Specifically, you say that, but specifically it's about not having, like, premarital sex, because what brings back Jason every time? People getting down and dirty in the middle of the lake. Like, you don't do that.
Is that what happened when he went to space?
Yes, actually.
Wow. Nice.
That's actually what woke him up,
Throughout Manhattan as well.
Well, actually, he was on the boat, and he got dragged to Manhattan, and then he fought a bunch of, like...
Wait, when you say he's on the boat, do you mean, like, he was, like, doing his thing swimming, and he just got, like, caught up in the boat?
No, he was, like, underneath the water, and he, like, climbed onto the boat. It's the most wild thing. You just see, like, oh, we're got to go off to New York and have a cruise, and you see Jason, like, on a rope. I was like, da-da! He started climbing up
on a vacation, too?
He needed to take Manhattan.
But to your point, horror movies do often reflect social anxieties, like Halloween being kind of
very much stranger danger in the
very much stranger danger, where it's like, oh god.
It took place also in a time when people were terrified of that, with stuff like the Manson murders and whatnot. It was on everyone's subconscious that someone wanted to speak to him. They wanted to, like, elaborate on, saying, like, I want to talk about my fears and see him, like, alleviated to prove that, like, it can be defeated. And even though...
What do you think horror movies today are representing?
I mean, it's...
With, like, the Babadook or, like, Hereditary.
Well, Babadook is very clearly and very blatantly, and the director's gone on record saying this, about the mourning process. About having to let someone go. And it is a terrifying movie, but it's also really, really sad. Like, it hurts to watch. Like, the little kid we have in this movie... And we'll talk about our little boy in this movie.
Shout out to that actor. I honestly, pretty good for a child actor.
Pretty
the
terrifying.
bar's low, but he cleared it, dude.
But it's also like, you think this kid's scary. In that one, like, ooh, that kid just does not make me feel good. But you had a question there, KP. Over there.
Would you consider, like, the Purges? Are they horror movies?
Horror movie? Oh, definitely. The whole Purge series, like, took a turn after the second one.
Where, to me, it's a huge social commentary, and if it kind of is almost scary now when you see the political climates and things like that.
The first one was more of your basic, like, home invasion scenario, and then after that they kind of, like, took the idea and said, okay, we're going to up the anxiety of what if everyone was out to get you. Mm-hmm. What if you were, like, on the street and there was no law, and more specifically, the law that was there was trying to kill you. You know, like, what really depends on everything and whatnot. It is generally a terrifying aspect, and absolutely it's a horror movie. And it's been on, like, Halloween Horror Nights whenever they release those. Anyway.
Back to the movie.
We should probably talk about... it's weird that we're, like, having a tangent on horror, but also that's what the movie is about. Yeah, it's talking about the horror genre itself.
Right.
So, I want to talk...
Right, it's a movie about writing a movie.
Movie about writing a movie, but also... what your role in the movie is, specifically with Heather, which is a great little segue. We should probably talk about the main character of Heather Langenkamp playing herself, which is...
It's very, very, again, very meta.
Like, not only were, like, aspects of the movie based on true events, like, she did have a stalker at the time, there were earthquakes happening, she had also not been on the silver screen for a long time and kind of took a step back and was indeed married to a special effects artist. Not the guy who played him in the movie, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe not.
A lot of people did reprise their role. Like, Robert Shea played himself, Wes Craven played himself, And then you have a bunch of references, like if you've seen the movies, you'll catch them.
There was like one guy who was there for like he was on screen for like a second.
He was at
like
the funeral.
Yeah.
And he's at the funeral and in the picture from the movie.
Yes.
Yeah, he was
Wes
one of
Craven's wall or something.
They wanted to get, if I remember correctly, they wanted to get Johnny Depp because he was in the very first one, but Wes was too terrified to talk to him because like he's too big of a star now. He ain't gonna listen to me. Which, you know,
what movie said he starred in by that point?
He hadn't reached his pirate stride yet, but he was he was like on his what's that one? 21 Jump Street.
Yes,
he was on that. He was on that roll. He was on that train.
He had probably done
Crybaby.
But what's funny is the fact that he also had a cameo in the movie before this, Freddy's Dead, which is arguably the worst in this franchise. The one that like Wes and Freddy are kind of referencing as making Freddy into a complete joke.
Right.
Because there's like a scene from like Freddy's Dead, if I remember correctly, where like the house is falling from the sky, and like you hear like the do from Wizard of Oz, and he opens the window, and you just see Freddy in a full broom and a witch hat saying, "I'll get you, my pretty,
right,
and your little soul too, ha ha!" And he falls back.
Right.
It's the tornado. It's the most buck wild thing I've ever seen. It's great. The movie is a wild ride, but. Yes.
Oh no, I just looked it up. It does not. Freddy's Dead does not have good reviews.
Oh, I could have told you that.
Oh, it's not. No,
it ends with the phrase "Freddy's dead," and then immediately after, like, we have to make a sequel, which is like it did kind of slowly like lower in terms of like box office, and unfortunately, New Nightmare was the one that crashed at the box office, even though this was the cheapest one to make for a number of reasons, because they were able to use a lot of B-roll. But back to the point of. All right, so what do we think about Miss Heather Langenkamp? Like,
I thought her performance was quite good.
Playing yourself, kind of, I would hope you play yourself well. I say that. It's weird to come from a place of truth and kind of revealing it, I suppose. What do you think, and what do you think about her performance and all that stuff?
She was able to, I thought it was good, and it was also, she was also able to merge the first performance in the original with this performance, as in you could see where, okay, she's a teenager playing in a movie, and that could have impacted the way she carries herself and the way she thinks about things in her real life. When you merge the two on film, it made sense the way she depart. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. There's also a whole thing about her general arc that I've always found really interesting about in the movie, which is just her having to, like, you have to become Nancy one last time to put the devil down, essentially. And basically, it's also her just trying to raise her kid without a father, and it's also just her trying to go through the mourning process with a kid. That's really the main plot of the movie. And if you look at it in that way, it really changes the way in which the horror orients itself. Because it comes this whole question about tragedy and about loss and trying to move forward with your life after something just rocks your life and changes it beyond repair. And so, like, the way in which she was able to talk to her kid during those moments after the father died, in those little moments where she's, like, happy, it's really heartbreaking, like, because there's always that bit of silence afterwards, where it's like, you can even see in her face that, like, nothing is going to be the same ever again. And, like, you can never get that back.
Well, that's because Freddy Krueger literally killed her husband.
That is true.
So...
just to come back out.
Yeah, I don't know what those morgue people were doing. They did an autopsy. They peeled it back. And just your standard everyday car crash. He must have had a bunch of knives.
It must have some weird glass. It's a glass, man.
Glass cuts real even.
Especially if you hit a wall.
And then a bobcat attacked him.
It was the wind.
This movie also can be some buck wild times, let me tell you.
the dead body's just in the hallway.
Yeah.
I mean, that could arguably be a reference to, like, the first movie where, like, she saw the body bag of her friend, kind of like saying, like, come on, Nancy. But also it is still very weird to see.
Well, I thought it was kind of showed the inadequacy of the people in that particular area.
Also, it could show, like, the
guy was eating a burger or something while he was drinking his coffee,
coffee.
standing over dead bodies, right? So
the old joke about anyone who for someone who runs a funeral home or a morgue is like, he will always or she will always be just numb to death to the point of like, oh, I'm eating my burger. Oh, I dripped my mustard onto the gash on the wound. Let me wipe it out. Oh no, it's gotten everywhere.
Listen, they're not going to mind.
Listen, it's this. I need my Dijon. I need my Dijon, man.
Dijon, dude, that's too good to waste.
Especially on a wound like that.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going full Hannibal Lecter. We got to reel it back. All right. We should probably also now move our little antennae over to Freddy himself, which goes through a whole arc. My favorite scene in the movie is from like the very beginning, where she's having the interview on the TV, and they're like, "So what about that? Like the new movie? Is Freddy really dead?" Blah blah. And they bring out Robert Englund dressed in full Freddy Krueger makeup, and like they start playing like an upbeat version of the Nightmare thing, do 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 do, and then eventually, just like he starts high-fiving these kids in the crowd, and it really just comes to show how this horror, like something that's designed to scare kids, has become a joke. But it doesn't become scary anymore. Like if you can compare that to many different things today, like Ray and I could tell you, being people who have foregone the internet, name a single horror person or item in a video game that has turned into a joke. Go.
All of them.
Name one though. Name one specific.
Name one specifically.
Yes.
I'll
give you a hint. Same name.
Same name.
That's Freddy.
Oh. Literally every game. Every game. Doki
Fred
Doki
Durst?
Literature Club, Freddy, all
Doki
that.
Doki Literature Club, Freddy Fazbear's, absolutely.
Oh, Freddy Fazbear.
Yeah,
Yes.
but
That's who you're thinking of. I was like, who on earth are you talking?
I was also like, who
legit
on
had
earth
to
are you
act
talking-
like,
You know what? That's fair. It's been ages. But the one that always comes to my mind, specifically because of a recent event, well, I say
Was that the
recent.
bite of 87?
Shush. But yeah, is the Slender Man. Because he became such a joke, but also because the horror of what he represented kind of turned to reality when those kids stabbed that other girl. There was and it was almost like 2016, 2014? There was some year where these two girls invited another girl, and this is, again, 100% a true story, where they took this girl and they would stab her a bunch of times in order to appease the Slender Man. It's that thing where horror and reality kind of bend, but not because of like the actual horror exists, but because in their minds, the Slender Man was real.
Yeah, you think there'd be enough material to make a good movie.
Well, I mean, this is real life, though.
listen, it harps on the inherent fear of tall white guys.
That's fair. Again, it also played into the fear of stranger danger. You don't see right now, but
Tall
KP
white
is giving
guys.
a weird look.
KP, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Slender.
I think he doesn't understand what we've been talking about for like
All right.
the last.
But I
30
do think
seconds.
too that just the Halloween, when you're talking about children,
Yeah.
Halloween in general gives you a month of romanticizing these characters, which is not necessarily, I don't think it's a bad thing, but you do have kids come to doors dressed like Freddy Krueger, dressed like
The
Jason.
movie really.
Scream guy.
Sure.
Ghostface.
Yes. I mean, so that is it becomes a bit of a cult of personality thing. Yeah.
It comes to CM Punk. But very much like the movie
Yes.
does come.
Cult of personality. CM
Yeah.
Punk.
Yes,
Yes. Not any of the artists that actually wrote the song.
No. I will.
CM Punk did that.
CM Punk wrote that song.
Popularized it.
By Paul Heyman produced it.
Yes.
But to go back to my point, the movie really does combat these two rivaling ideas of whether or not we've romanticized Freddy too much versus are we trying to police people morally through like saying you can't watch horror, you can't do this, blah 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 blah. Even though it's something that's existed for a long time, because I feel like it's Wes really kind of looking back on what he's made and kind of trying to come to terms with what he's done.
I do think too, though. Yes, absolutely, and that's the Doctor's role in the movie, right?
Yeah,
is to we're kind of sort of vaguely hinting around at that, and then the Doctor comes in and just beats you over the head with it. Are you showing your child these movies? You know what I mean? But I do think too, just going back to you talking about Freddy and the performance in the movie, I thought Robert Englund was really good, as you said earlier, as Robert Englund. You know what I mean? I did feel like he did that well.
Yeah, he played himself off as like the guy, as like the celebrity, but not really the celebrity. You know,
Did we ever find out if he was dead?
We never find out if he's dead or Wes is dead by the end of the movie. All we know is that they're gone.
Oh, okay.
In fact, we don't even see the real Freddy Krueger until like at least more than halfway through the movie. We see allusions to him. We see like little claws here and there. We see some people die due to these claws, but we never see the demonic figure till he busts out of the closet.
Right.
Which could be a nod to Freddy too, but that's a whole other discussion.
Okay.
But there's there's so much to talk about in regards to Robert Englund's performance of this. He went from a joke in like the last one where it's more of a horror comedy to turning into a straight out of your nightmares demon in this one, where he'll make the occasional joke, but it's more of like not really making a joke, but more of just sadistic, like I am enjoying inflicting pain onto you because I finally got you where I want you, which is basically what he wants by the movie. Ugh.
Which is why he infiltrated Craven's dreams in the first place.
Yeah, he wants
to get even with her in the first movie.
Yeah, you embarrassed me in the first one. Now I'm embarrassing you
in real life.
And then after I'm done embarrassing you, I'm busting out of here, and I'm getting out. I'm gonna come to the real world. So, on that note, we should probably switch around to another aspect, one final aspect of the movie, which would be Heather's kid, who is the linchpin in this movie in terms of Freddy's whole plot and revenge, and also a whole huge moral thing in the movie. You mentioned earlier, Jared, that you thought the performance was really good for a kid.
Yeah, like that one scene where he's just screaming and tilting his head back. Oh man, I was feeling the whole thing where he gets his voice all gravelly and just,
never sleep again.
It's good. It's way better than I would have expected for just some random kid. Well, not some random kid, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. What did we think of here? Because the kid's performance has often been considered very controversial.
What do you mean by controversial?
Not controversial. I mean, some people will say, "Oh, he did a great job doing a terrified performance." Other people say he is the most wooden thing I've ever seen in my life. But also,
I mean, it's supposed to
be.
He's
a child.
It's supposed to be a little. I don't want to say campy.
How are you supposed to act when you,
to
some degree, feel like you're being taken
possessed.
over by somebody? A possession of Freddy Krueger. What is your cadence supposed to be there?
That is true. I mean, I'm with you guys.
And too, they kind of wrote into the script the woodenness. All right, he sleepwalks. Periodically. You know what I mean? So not to mention, doesn't it make him more creepy that there aren't a lot of facial expressions and there aren't?
It adds to the thing where you don't know what does Freddy have him right now? Does he not? Is he sleepwalking? Is he in a daze? Is it because he's still processing the death of his father?
And there's a confusion, exactly, processing the death. There's a confusion with him as to what is real, what's not real, whether or not he's being possessed. Is his mom really in danger? Did he lose his dad on something that makes sense, tangible, that you can, or is this fantasy that forced his dad to go away through the sleep dream thing? It's got to be. I mean, I would assume. I felt like he did it right. Jeez.
I think he did good, especially for someone his age.
Yeah, absolutely.
Time. What do we think, Ray? What do we think?
I feel like he was really good.
Fantastic.
I also feel like there was kind of an inevitable cheese. It was inevitably. There was no way that this was going to happen without there just being a little
bit of cheesiness, a little bit of silliness. It is Freddy Krueger.
I mean, yeah, it's
right.
It's
Freddy's
Freddy
the whole
movie.
time. Freddy has been the one-liner guy, and all that doesn't go away here either.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's who the character is.
He's darker. He is 100% darker, but he's still at his heart. Still Freddy's.
Yeah,
he's still Freddy's dead.
And too, watching it 15 years later or whatever. Obviously, when you're watching it, just the makeup, all those things are going to be slightly cheesier than they would be if they were done last year.
High definition cameras often perhaps reveal
too much.
Right.
A lot of
Correct.
the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like when he's floating in the freeway.
Yeah.
Yeah. It becomes.
I also feel like the makeup on actual Freddy could have been better.
That's what we were talking about.
I think that could have
That's
been
what I'm
helped. Yeah, again, with when you get when you put a VHS that you've watched a dozen times before into a player and watch it on the curved TV, you tend to lose a little bit of the fine detail, and it's almost scarier because of that. Where it's you're never certain if the dark is actually empty or if there's something there you can't quite see.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's interesting. The medium changing through the years is very interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Well, now you have to actually factor in the fact that you need that area to be
pitch black.
Right. Whereas before, it would just be that way because you can't see it any better.
Yeah. It's a whole spooky thing over there, and I'm afraid to touch that. It's great. Okay, do we have any other thoughts on the movie that we didn't touch on just yet, that we were hey, why haven't we talked about this? Because this movie is dense. And there's been a lot that we've kind of glossed over for the sake of kind of hitting the main beats that I feel like are the most important aspects of it.
Not that I can think of, other than the weird hand crank guy at the funeral. I guess I just... Is that really how they...
Riddle me this. Riddle me this. The earthquakes.
Yes.
Freddy came along with many of them.
Yes, he did.
We find out somewhere along the line that the grave doesn't actually fall down during one of the quakes, and then she actually thinks there's one quake that isn't.
Yes.
Were these quakes in the real world associated with Freddy? Were more than one or two of them just her imagination?
From what I've been able to tell from reading the script myself, and also just kind of like watching the movie several times, the earthquakes are supposed to coincide with Freddy literally breaking out of his realm of being stuck.
That would make sense, right?
And then slowly but surely, as he kind of fine-tunes it, it becomes more focused on just driving Nancy insane and embarrassing her in front of everyone. It's kind of like, you made me look the fool, I'm going to make you look the fool, have you look crazy, and have your son taken away from you.
At first, it's shaking literally reality for all of us. And then as he gets closer to Nancy's issues, because he gets the husband, he gets Heather, and then he's able to get it into her. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, so that's the way I read it specifically. And plus, another fun fact about the movie that I kind of brought this up when we were watching the movie at the time is the fact that the earthquakes were actually just happening in LA at the time, and that they didn't actually, like, they wrote it into the script, but when the big quake happened in 95, they were able to, okay, we can just shoot some B-roll. We didn't have a plan for this. So they just, like, quickly, like, had a car drive around in front of the big wrecked areas. It's like, just keep going. Keep driving.
Get the footage.
Get the footage. Get the B-roll. Fun little factoid.
I also really liked the cemetery scene.
The cemetery scene is
because
wild.
everything that could have happened at its worst happened.
It was incredible.
Like a gravestone fell. Another gravestone fell. The dude who the hand crank who went a little too early bolted out of there.
The coffin drops.
Fell into the hole.
Kid
fell somehow into there. Freddy was in the grave, dragged him into.
Let's not mention the fact that she tripped and bonked her head on the stage.
God.
She's very tall.
Which evidently happened. In
That's
like the reality,
that
not just
happened.
The vision,
yes,
or whatever you want to call it.
The visage.
Yes,
it is wild. All right, I think we should probably wrap this up. I'll get on my little soapbox for my final argument for why I believe this is a classic. See, why I pitched this one specifically is because not only is it Wes kind of speaking to his own creation, but his kind of statement on the genre itself that he helped to kind of create. How the public consumed the films and glorified this terrifying figure to the point that he became a joke, as we've been alluding to throughout the podcast, and the fact that that by doing so can create its own kind of monster through, like, desensitization, and how the moral outrage culture at the time regarding slasher films that we also see today with certain horror movies only, like, it's so busy trying to police the way in which we consume media that it kind of lets these other evils pass, if that makes any sense. Like, blatantly ignoring the obvious for the sake of we have to focus on the movies, even though there's someone killing someone in the background. But more than that, I feel like it speaks to the importance of slashers themselves as a kind of natural evolution of the Brothers Grimm, a natural evolution of the stories you would tell your kids at night back in the old German days. The old German days, I say. Because...
with all the lederhosen and all that.
Yeah. It's just the fact that they were able to contain some of the evils of the world, as the movie kind of said, and to save you from making the same mistakes in life. Whether they be exaggerated to the treatment of, like, Freddy Krueger, or if it's more just, like, more hold down, don't go into the woods at night. That's why I consider it a classic, because it is the final word, in my opinion, on what slashers are and what they were meant to the period at the time. That is me stepping off the soapbox now. That's the sound of me stepping off.
We've got some Foley work.
We have Foley work in here.
Talking about.
All right, if you all want to disagree or agree, now would be the time. I'll pass it around, pass the torch, the conch. Here you go, Jared. What do you think?
I'm not entirely sure because I don't exactly have the context for a lot of the other Freddy movies. Like, Freddy's not scary to me at all. He's, like, hilarious. He's like a cartoon character that wants to murder you, which sounds like it might be scary, but he just, like, does wacky things.
I feel like that's also kind of the point of the movie, though, isn't it? The fact that he has become that joke. The fact that now, like, everyone associates him with, like, the one-liners and the, like, no one forget the power glove, and he hits the button and he just shuts the gate.
It's just so, I don't know. It's so wild to me. The whole, like, I don't know. Again, I feel like I'm just, like, lacking context for a lot of what it's trying to say. So I'm not really sure.
So we're going to say N.A.
Yeah.
Possibly?
Yeah. Not applicable.
Not applicable?
I
need
like,
more context, I guess.
Freddy was never scary to me.
Yeah.
So I'm not coming from the point of, oh, this scary thing has been popularized and kind of watered down and become this kind of funny thing, because if I watch, like, the original movie, if it's anything like this, I'd be just having a great time laughing at it. Especially, God, if he does the tongue thing in any of those other movies.
He did that in the first one.
Oh my God, that was so funny. The film, like, realized it was funny too, with, like, the kid trying to stab the tongue, and he's just like, oh God, moving the tongue around trying to dodge it.
Well, and two, him dying with a forked tongue is a neat, you know what I mean?
Yeah, demonic.
Yeah.
What do you think, KB? What do you think?
Well, I think I'm glad that you went first, because I think it's important that your generation, especially when you talk about the way what the movie's trying to accomplish anyway.
Mm-hmm.
His generation, your generation, Ray's generation, Freddy Krueger is the guy you dress your kid up for Halloween.
Yeah.
The movie itself, like 84, whatever, it comes out and they spend the beginning of the movie talking about a community of children that disappear, the house they disappeared in, all of those things. That's what made Freddy scary. You know what I mean? The fact that his tongue's too long or he's creepy, none of that matters if you don't have the fear in the children and you realize children, because nothing's worse than somebody stealing children.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's where the evilness sets in here. And and for him to be striving to gain almost a respect back does make this different, correct?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, I do think that when you look at any of these movies that we pull out of time periods, you have to factor in, is it a classic in that time? The beautiful thing Rob Zombie's done is he's re-giving you these movies and put respect in the Michael Myers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like he really wanted to make Michael Myers in the newer movies kind of more bloody, more like grounded in the reality of Earth, I guess.
Correct, yeah. But I don't think that this movie does that like his movies do that, right? Mm-hmm. But I do think that part of that is just because of the time period in which it's made, and there is it can't get away from the campiness of it all. So I do think I lean towards classic, but I also think it almost has to be qualified as in classic for genre,
a cult classic
for moment,
really,
right? Correct,
classic.
exactly, right.
You know, we should really have like a whole list of like when we say classic, do we mean like cinematic classic, cult classic,
undeniable,
yeah,
right. Yeah. Transcends genre,
yeah.
that kind of thing.
This definitely I think counts more as a cult classic, because if you kind of compare it, it's like I consider New Nightmare along the same lines as Casablanca. Like no, like I'll be the first to say, even
it's
though
not Giant, it's not Casablanca.
I love
right.
New Nightmare to death. It's one of my personal favorites, but I would never on God's green earth say it's on the same league.
Right.
But I do think it's a cult classic in that way. So
cool. Ray, what do you think?
I didn't really watch the other Freddy movies, so I don't really think I have a right place here.
Yeah.
I did want to see what would happen if people who hadn't seen any other movies just went into it blind. I will say that.
Like, it does reference it enough to where you don't, like, have to see it.
Right.
But I feel like it plays on, like, the emotional strings of that movie, where it's like, oh, this was a scary moment in that movie. And it's like, well, I don't have any context for that, so it's just a thing that's happening that's like this movie.
Also, though, I feel like if they would have gone back and explained how horrible Freddy is and given you that and tried to encapsulate that feel, it takes away from the fact that Freddy is stumbling through a world that doesn't respect him.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Or trying to enter a world that doesn't respect him in any way.
Well, I feel it's 2 NAs.
Cult.
1 cult. And so,
Boom Boom Cabana.
So we're gonna call
That
that.
was not.
We're gonna call this one a cabana. Oh, Copacabana.
Yeah.
Cult of Copacabana. All right, so thank you all for listening to us. I feel like we've had a nice little discussion about the movie. Hope you check it out. Good luck finding it. I have it, like, you can get it on DVD. I don't know if it's on Blu-ray. And it is on, like, I don't think it's on any streaming service. So, again,
You can find it.
you can find it. There are ways.
Oh, did you guys have an idea what we might be coming back with next?
I do indeed. See, Jared and I have this thing we like to do every fall, which is we're going to show a little mini-series called... Jared, you want to say what the name of it?
Over the Garden Wall.
Over the Garden Wall.
I really, really, really enjoy it. I think it is a modern fairy tale in quite a lot of ways.
It
I think
is.
you described it as like the
It's if Mark Twain decided to write the Brothers Grimm.
yes.
There you go.
It's like an American
Where can we find it if we want to research it before?
You can
The
check it out.
podcast
Last I
is
checked, it
up.
was on Hulu, but I think
HBO Max.
it's on HBO Max now. And you can also purchase it on Google Play. You can get it on DVD as well.
It's perfect for the fall season.
Perfect for the fall season. Bring the kids. It's a bit scary, but not New Nightmare scary. In terms of it is silly as New Nightmare, I would say, in some ways.
Yes, and there are parts of it that are scary in different ways.
We'll discuss the entirety of Lorna when we get there.
Yes.
Think.
Hmm?
No. I remember. I
Over the
I
Garden
think I watched this when it dropped, but I was very young, so I just forgot.
Yeah, you had to have been like
It was
8
like
or something.
It was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
2014-ish when it released.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But anyway,
I was
7,
I
8-ish,
was
yeah.
Yeah,
I was
so-
very.
Time to look at it again with fresh eyes and get ready for me to bust out a whole college paper when we discuss that movie. So, once again, from our team here at Is It a Real Classic, this has been Litnick.
John Wick Jared,
Cobra Kai, KP.
now on Netflix.
Just
Ratatouille!
Just
This
call-
has been a Go Home Heat production 2020. Once again, telling you to go out there and find some good content. You'll never know if you'll find the next classic. And...
Everything's art.
Cut!
just call me.